Hi, Mike Madge with Small World Big Data, and we're talking about virtualization today. Basically, we are all aware what's going on with the Broadcom-VMware acquisition, and people are scrambling in a lot of cases to find out what they should be doing when their license costs spiral out of control, or they just look around and say, this is not tenable to keep going forward on the path we're going. I've got SoftIron today here with me, and we're going to explore some of the things that you might want to think about when you're making your plan B for virtualization. So just hold on a second. Hey, welcome, Charles. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Maybe just explain to the audience, introduce yourself a little bit, explain to the audience why did you get involved in this industry in virtualization, taking on Goliath? What was it that attracted you to coming in and with a company like SoftIron here and saying this is something we should do?
Sure. So my title here at SoftIron is fellow cloud architecture. I've been in IT for 25 or so years, and basically seen all of the different transitions from a technology standpoint over the last 25 years in infrastructure and architecture and things such as that. And so virtualization is one of those ones where it has revolutionized the way that we do things in IT, and very very easy to do much more with much less in general. And so to have the different abstractions and things that we can do based on the different services and solutions that we have is very important. And so to kind of answer your question directly, what drew me to SoftIron with what they're doing, SoftIron has a very unique product portfolio, if you will, in general. We make our own hardware and we make our own software. From a hardware standpoint, the reason why we started to make our own hardware was because a lot of the commodity vendors and things like that, they usually outsource the manufacturing processes to external parties and things like that. And so what we did is we wanted to be able to ensure that there's a provenance in not only the supply chain, but also in the outcome of the systems that we produce. And so whenever we make a server, it is built to do its job specifically and not some randomized function. So think a storage server, there are very minimal components in it, or a compute server, there's no hard drives in it, those types of things. And so the thing that I guess to more directly answer your question, what drew me to SoftIron specifically from a cloud-based standpoint comes down to that approach that they wanted to take is making systems and solutions that are much simpler to use and to consume in general, and not only having a secure by design approach to that implementation, but also being able to ensure that the scalability and the growth capacity from a system-based standpoint and the solution standpoint is very easy to do in general.
All right, so let's talk just stay on that just for a second. So there are definitely public cloud providers out there where you can just go buy virtual resources, give them your credit card and pay a lot of money. And you could still run your own infrastructure and build your own components up there. But what we're really talking about here is really operating something that looks like a private cloud on behalf of your organization. So there are a few examples of private cloud technologies there. But tell me a little bit about what private cloud means to someone who's in IT and running their own private cloud, because virtualization is pretty complex, right? There's a lot of stuff going on there. What does it take to take like a, just kind of this VMware operating environment that they might have had for years, but really change and morph it into a private cloud? What does that mean?
Sure. Well, the whole notion of a private cloud in general, kind of comes down to certain attributes. Think things like your virtualization, automation, being able to pool your resources, self-service provisioning, your typical data storage and management, elasticity in general, scalability in general, being able to orchestrate your different resources and manage them in a very simple way. So think things like your software-defined networking, software-defined storage in general, and then being able to kind of tie those into a resource usage, billing and chargeback Those are things that I begin to think of whenever I look at what a private cloud should be. 9 times out of 10, it's very difficult to reach that outcome or those or get those properties using the typical solutions that we have today. And so that's kind of more of being able to take that experience that the public cloud providers have produced and have built and arguably spent billions of dollars on and have thousands and thousands of engineers to kind of manage and maintain to provide that single outcome. That's something that we're trying to essentially target from a usage standpoint in the private cloud standpoint.
All right, let's pick on some names here. So we know I already pulled out VMware there. As a competitor to that, we have Nutanix, we have just the Cisco Nutanix bundles. You might see Hyper-V kind of in some places being called a private cloud. You have some people using open source and saying, hey, this is really a private cloud because it does this container Kubernetes thing. But there's you have with SoftIron built something that is I almost don't want to say cloud native because it's not in the public cloud, but it is specifically for the cloud era. Can you tell us like why, what technologically makes SoftIron different or even philosophically different than what came before?
Yeah, sure. Certainly. So, the cloud native doesn't necessarily mean running those things in, Azure or AWS or those sorts of things. Is really, kind of pertains to the simplicity of the way that the solution is architected. So, think things like containers and microservices and things like that. And so when we set out to build a solution on premises, we took that notion as kind of the start. Now, being able to take your as the cloud service providers call it, legacy workloads, or otherwise known as software that we've been running for decades, take that and move it into a cloud native type of approach. That takes a little bit of work and a very specific type of expertise. And so, there really aren't a lot of options out there to kind of move away from, let's say, a VMware type of behavior and move into something that seems similar or feels similar, but also gives you that platform to grow in the cloud native type of approach. And so we took that as our defining motion to be able to be the bridge between those quote unquote legacy solutions and give you the on-ramp or the foundation to be able to move into that more of a cloud native type of behavior. So again, your microservices, your container-based types of workloads and things such as that.
All right, so kind of a glue in there. So hypercloud involves somebody actually doing a fairly in-depth implementation in the sense of they've got to get hardware in place, they've got the software in place. So it's not something casually done necessarily, but you've come up with something in the middle here for people. Why don't you tell us what that is? And I believe it's aimed right at that VMware market.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, kind of the difficulty, if you will, of hypercloud is you have to actually take a server out of a box, plug it into a rack, connect it, and power it on. Ultimately, that's the last thing you have to do. From that standpoint, it is really simple, and we tried to make it as simple as possible. But what ends up being a little bit difficult sometimes is, users and customers and businesses have either contracts with some of the other hardware vendors, so think your Dells, your HPs, your Supermicros, and they don't necessarily want to kill those contracts or those relationships in general. And so we created a solution called VM Squared, which is able to run on commodity hardware, on any of those commodity hardwares, and it's very, very lightweight. It is an operating system, so it's going to consume the entire server in general. But it really is, as you kind of mentioned, an on-ramp to that true private cloud, from a system-based standpoint and a solution standpoint. You're still going to have to manage the hardware underneath it. So, of course, the firmware and all the pieces that go into the care and feeding of those specific hosts in general. Whereas from a hypercloud standpoint, you can install one binary to update the hypercloud, and it's going to do all the firmware, all the out-of-band management, all the software in general for you. But VM Squared is our solution to kind of bridge the gap between what you have today and where you really should be going from a private cloud standpoint.
All right, so you've taken a lot of the goodness from what you've done in hypercloud and you've made it portable, I guess you would say, so
Yeah.
people can run it on their either existing or hardware that they can get outside there. But there's still then a little bit more work to tweak that to get
Yep.
it to work right. That sounds fine. Uh, what who would find VM squared really attractive? I guess and let's talk specifically about VMware existing VMware customers. So I've got VMware in here. I know there's a licensing cost angle that you can probably address here, but what with that and what else? Why would I look at VM squared as my next step?
Sure. So, whenever you look at the different types of customers that VMware has in general, it really spans very small organizations to really large organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and very small implementations, even 2 to 3 VMs or 4 or 5 VMs, and they don't need a lot of footprint in general. All the way up to businesses with tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of VMs. That's kind of the fantastic outcome that VMware has had over these last 25 years. Is they have built a massive and really valuable ecosystem that can satisfy all those different types of markets. And so to answer your question, I guess more very directly, we're targeting all of them. And so, businesses that are very small are able to use VM squared in a way that is natural and functional for them based on what they know. Whereas, to be able to have the flexibility and the scalability of being able to move into those multi-hundreds and thousands of VMs for your infrastructure, also providing a platform for, again, your legacy solutions and your cloud native types of solutions, and even a bridge between them. We're targeting everyone in that front in general.
All right, I want to talk just a little bit about scaling capabilities here. We know for running VMware, we've got certain limits on our cluster sizes and certain limits on the way we
Yep.
can manage things. Every node needs to be managed, but you've taken a slightly more open or enabling approach with hypercloud. Can you tell us how that compares up when we talk about scaling out and scaling in and scaling up and
Yeah,
all that
sure.
stuff?
So from a hypercloud standpoint, there's actually no limitation that we have currently from the number of hosts that you can have within a hypercloud. The number in the database is 65,535, which is a small integer. So we can actually tweak that number if we wanted to. We're hoping that someone will challenge us on that. So we'll be able to sell you hundreds of thousands of nodes in a single cluster. But the point there is that we've had all of these different types of clusters and small entities of systems that we've had to manage. And it really is an increase in the burden, or really the architectural burden, for having to be able to manage all of these. And so that's the view that we took in general from a hypercloud as well as a VM squared standpoint, is being able to ensure that minimum cluster size can really be really large. So in fact, to answer that question as well, on the VM squared side of things, the largest cluster size currently is 1,024 nodes. We could extend that. It's kind of an arbitrary limit that we've added to it because we kind of want to move people into the hypercloud world of things in general. But the VM sizes, the amount of storage that you can have for like a single disk can have like 243 petabytes of in size, which is kind of silly. But with AI and ML these days, we're going to grow in general. So I think 8,192 virtual CPUs is the limit currently, which is actually the limit in Linux. And then I think we can have like four petabytes of memory, which again is the Linux kernel limitation. So it's not necessarily our limitation there. It's just what systems are built to do.
Right. So you really opened up the architecture that someone has well past what VMware limits are. So not only can they get probably a better deal going on here, a simpler environment, but one that's operated like a cloud and one that is a lot more flexible, if you will,
That's right.
to take on whatever tomorrow's workloads are coming along here. I have another note here, just kind of sideways here on quantum and quantum cryptography, and you guys are doing something unique in that space. Can you tell us what that is? What's the concern with security and quantumness? I mean, you're not putting quantum bits in there yet, right?
Well, so yeah, no. What it does, what we've implemented is what's called post quantum cryptography. And it's basically taking the cryptographic modules for the different encryption functions, the different behaviors that we use to ensure that the storage data is encrypted, whether it's in transit or at rest, on the system. The reason why this is important is because, well, quantum computers are coming. There are a few that have already been built, and so to have the protection for the future, we kind of needed to look at it today, because we didn't want to start from a position of on our heels to take care of a problem that's already in place. We wanted to ensure that it was cut out at the start. And that's ultimately what we implemented. So in both the hypercloud operating system and the VM2 operating system, we support post-quantum encryption or post-quantum cryptography across the board.
I mean, that's awesome. And just to emphasize this, folks, if you watching this, it's not about being ready for when quantum computers can break your passwords. We're pretty sure they're going to be able to do that someday. Yeah. It's about all the data that you're putting around now that's encrypted with algorithms and that can be broken in the future, because people can just track that. People can copy down your encrypted stuff today and wait a couple years till they can break it, if it even takes a couple years. So you need to be encrypting everything you want protected today from the future hacking attempts.
That's right.
And I don't think people are quite well aware of all the stuff in the past that's been put out there on the internets in vulnerable encrypted forms in the past. But that's a reckoning coming soon.
It is.
So we definitely want to be ahead of that. Okay, so VM2 attacking that, attacking that VMware sort of Broadcom problem that a lot of people are facing. Hyper cloud for when they really realize that they should be adopting this. Is hypercloud also good for MSPs, CSPs, and things like that? Is this something that you're moving in that market as well?
Absolutely. I mean, hypercloud and VM2 both have multi-tenancy as a base.
Okay.
Very strict multi-tenancy in general. The thing that makes hypercloud very attractive, though, is the set it and forget it behavior. You don't have to worry about the hardware underneath. And in fact, all of the nodes themselves are ephemeral. There's no boot drive in them, which basically, if there's a problem, you reboot it and it'll come back. Usually, as they say, a problem's not a problem unless it survives a reboot. But then if something does fail, you just pull the node out and plug another one in, and it just gets consumed, kind of like the Borg. Whenever something's no longer working, you kick it out and bring a new one in, and it just kind of builds on itself. From a VM2 standpoint, we tried to pull as many of those types of behaviors in as possible. So you're going to get a very simplified installation process. The manner of using the system itself is very easy and very simple to use. We use a templating system within the entire environment. We have a marketplace that is able to be customized for your different tenancies as needed. So it's very, very MSP attractive in general. We have a customer of ours that actually bought a hypercloud to handle their core infrastructure, and then decided to become a cloud service provider because it just works so simply.
Yeah, and of course, the underlying message here is, if you are an IT shop, you should already be an internal service provider to your company's divisions, departments, or whatever else. So if it's the same kind of solution that externally providing service providers are using, it should be exactly the thing you want to do as well, and vice versa. So those are all great arguments back and forth. I'm loving the idea of offering people both an option to not have to have their first step off the ledge be a complete infrastructure-based solution, but something they can do on their existing hardware, the existing contracts, that you've got I'm going to get this right, post-quantum cryptography embedded in there already, which makes it great, I'm assuming, for the federal government markets, who probably have a regulatory reliance on that, as well as people who should. Everyone else should be post-quantum cryptographically safe. See, I said that on there. Right. If someone wants to learn more about these things, Charles, where would you point them at to find out a little bit deeper information, maybe kick the tires, get in touch with folks? Where would you go?
So SoftIron.com is our base website. We have a blog site as well, blog.softiron.com. You can also shoot an email to info@softiron.com and someone will get back to you. We do have a trial for VMsquared. Obviously, hypercloud is a little bit more difficult to trial out of the gate because it's all inclusive, the hardware and the software. Whereas with VMsquared, you can kind of get a feel for the way the solution looks and how it works. Yeah, shoot us an email. Hop on the website. We'll certainly give you a hand.
All right, great stuff. Thanks for coming here today, Charles. At some point,
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have you back and talk a little bit more about how this is all going. I don't imagine that VMware Broadcom is going to be making inroads anymore. This all looks like retrograde stuff for them. So some big opportunities for you all. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Take care.